Again, my name is Gwen Sorley, and today we're talking about how mindfulness empowers us and improves executive function. I think it's important first that we simply reflect on what mindfulness is. We talk about it all the time, we hear about it, but let's think about what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is the practice of gently focusing your awareness on the present moment. You're fully immersed in and at one with the present moment. This experience is what's known as true presence. So if you think of those last two words right there, true presence, do you feel on your day to day and your day to day as you go through your routines, are you truly present? Or do you feel more scattered and distracted and anxious and stressed? How many of you feel truly present and how many of you feel more distracted or stressed? Probably most of us feel distracted and stressed and anxious. And there's a reason for that. I want you to stop right now and type in the chat box. What are you doing besides watching this webinar? Go ahead and type in the chat box. What else are you doing? Are you answering an email? Are you maybe looking at TikTok to find a new joke for tonight? Okay, keep them coming. There's lots of responses here, and I won't be offended. Tell me what else you're doing other than watching this webinar. Andrea says playing with putty. Kimberly's eating lunch. Karen is on a conference call at the same time. Amy is working. Regina's working. Marissa's checking her ear pods. Ellen is drinking tea. Mia's looking at her work emails. Ariel says, LOL, typing a report. Susan working on an art commission. Bonnie, 75% of the time, I am distracted, anxious. I'm worried about everyone else in every moment until it's time to go to bed. That's so common, Bonnie. Bruce says, enjoying a tea and trying to do a body scan. So we are all guilty of multitasking, aren't we? Even though we know that the brain is wired. Oh, Linda's waiting for her pizza pickup. Even though we know we are wired, our brain is wired and does best when we do one thing at a time, we are all guilty of multitasking. And multitasking leads to distraction, leads to less productivity. It actually causes more stress, and it leads to more errors because we miss out on a lot of details. So we know that multitasking is not the best scenario for us, and yet we all do it. So it's important that we think about how can we be more truly present. Like Bonnie says, 75% of the time, she's thinking about everyone else and everything else until she goes to bed at night. And that can be a very stressful way to go throughout your day. So I hope today I can provide you with some simple mindfulness activities you can do in your daily routines. Because, many of you may have already tried to do mindfulness and you think, I can't do mindfulness. Mindfulness is too hard. And especially if we have ADHD, it can be really difficult if you have that constant running mind and you have difficulty with attention in the first place to then say, well, just practice mindfulness. It's a little bit difficult, can't it be? Especially if you're trying mindful techniques like Bruce mentioned, he's trying to do a mindful body scan. A mindful body scan is where you simply focus on each part of your body for a few seconds as you move from the head all the way down to your toes. Or you may have tried to do mindful yoga or maybe even mindful seated meditation. And you may think, It is so difficult for me to do that. So you kind of tend to not do mindfulness at all. But there's one mindfulness practice I want you to try today. And I want us all to start it right now as a group, if you can. Let's try this practice because I think if you incorporate this more into your day to day life, you'll definitely see improvements. And that is mindful listening. What if we right now practice mindful listening through mindful webinar watching? Because if you think about how you listen and communicate to others, it is so critically important that we truly are present for the other person. If we are listening mindfully, it allows us to develop awareness to fully listen to that other person. Mindfulness allows us to let go of distractions and also let go of your physical and emotional response to what others are saying and doing. So when you think about mindfully listening, we see a lot of examples of people not being in the present moment when other people are talking to them. A classic one that I always see, and maybe many of you here can relate to this, and maybe you've actually done it in the past yourself, in that you're at a restaurant and you look around at the tables that are around you, and there are some families at a table, there are couples at another table, friends, and there's one person at that table talking away, and all the other people at the table are looking through their phone, are texting other people. No one is really actively engaged. No one is really truly listening. And if you are in that situation where someone is talking to you, whether it's your partner or your child or maybe your colleague, if you are not mindfully listening and being present for that other person, it's very difficult for you to be compassionate, empathetic, understanding, and caring because you're not truly engaged. And so I want you to think about how you can be a better listener, how you can incorporate that act of being mindful while you're listening to another into your day to day. Because if you do this, think about how much you can improve your relationships across the board. If you stop and you look at the other person when they're talking to you and you set your phone aside and you're truly engaged, they are going to appreciate the fact that you are listening and that you care. So that's one act I want you to try incorporating because studies have shown that we only remember about 25% of what is said in a conversation almost immediately after that conversation is done. So think about if you are multitasking, if you are working on a report and answering emails and doing all these other things, waiting for your pizza to arrive, if you're doing all of these other things while someone is talking to you, if we on average only catch about 25% of what the other person is saying, that number might be even lower for us. And can we increase that by practicing mindful listening? Okay, because how many times have you said to your partner or your children, I wish you would just listen to me? Or you said something to another individual and you ask them a question and they said, remember, I told you that. And you say, no, you never told me that. I said, yeah, I did. Did they actually tell you that? And you missed it? Because like Benita says, the average person is 25%. I'm right around 10%. So we really have to work on being more mindful when we're listening. So if you take away one thing today, let's think about how we can incorporate mindfulness into at least the act of listening. And remember, the goal of mindful listening is to silence the internal noise of your own thoughts so that you can hear the entire message. When you are listening to someone, be present. And when you listen mindfully, your focus should be on that person you are listening to without distractions. So if we are going to do some mindful listening right now, you should prepare. How could you prepare for mindful listening? Right now, how can you prepare to be listening mindfully during this webinar? What could you do right now? Go ahead and type in the chat box. What could you do? Or if your partner walked into the room right now and wanted to talk to you about something, what could you do to prepare yourself for mindful listening? Bruce says, let my tea get cold. You could definitely do that. Mia, very good. Mia says, put her phone away. Excellent. Kathleen says, focus entirely on the webinar. Karen says, I was able to leave my work call. So that's one step. That's a great step. Regina, put work aside. Excellent. Lisa, take a deep breath and refocus. I love that. Sebastian says, oh, paying complete attention. Bonita says, look at nothing else. Very good. Turn off my phone, Lee says. Close all other apps on my computer. Andrea says, close tabs, silence phone. Toby says, turn off distractions. Ariel says, close out all programs on my computer. Sign language if someone walks in. Very good. So all of your suggestions, you had exactly what I had on my list. Mute your phone, take all of these steps. We know exactly what we need to do. And I've experienced this in my own home, right? Where my husband and I have this conversation where I really need you to listen to me at times, right? And have this conversation. And, because typically I'll walk into his office and he'll be working on something else. And so he's half listening. I end up not really saying exactly everything I wanted to talk about. And I end up walking away because I know he's not listening mindfully. But when I walk into his office after we may have one of these conversations and he stops and he puts his phone down, or he turns his computer away, or he mutes the TV, that actually changes our relationship. It changes how I talk to him, how I communicate. So that's important too. When you start listening mindfully, that changes the response from the other person and how you communicate. And if you're listening more mindfully, especially if you have young children, you're modeling that behavior. So when you need them to listen to you, they have a good model. They know how to stop all the distractions and listen and can start to understand how important that is. So mindful listening, let's walk away from this webinar today and practice at least a couple of times a day, really being more mindful. Bonita says, visualizing the interaction you described helped. Very good. Excellent. That really shows pure presence. You're really thinking about the present moment and what we're discussing today. So there are a lot of benefits of mindfulness. It decreases stress, promotes well-being, improves the neuroplasticity of the brain, reduces anxiety and stress, lowers blood pressure. Obviously, as we've been discussing, it improves listening and communication skills. And it's been shown to improve executive function. So many people who practice mindfulness, they indicate that they feel more focused. They are more focused. They're more productive. They're able to regulate their emotions better. They seem more self-aware. They're able to make better decisions. So it does seem that if you are able to be more present, it can improve your executive function. And remember, executive function is our ability to consciously control our thoughts, emotions, and actions in order to achieve certain goals. So if you think of all of those processes, right, your brain has the tools to utilize executive function. They include all of these processes, such as emotion regulation, self-monitoring, working memory, your ability to control your impulsivity. All of these processes, organize, avoid procrastination, remain on task. These are all processes of executive function. And the nervous system must be settled and calm in order to access reasoning, communication, conflict resolution, in addition to all of those other executive functions. And mindfulness is a technique that can actually help settle that nervous system, not multitasking, but being truly present. Not only does it calm the nervous system, but it can also change the architecture of your brain. There was a study that was done at Harvard, and they did an 8-week mindfulness stress reducing study. This was out of Harvard. And the participants did about 30 minutes of mindfulness techniques every single day for those 8 weeks. And the techniques included mindful body scan, which we talked about earlier. It included mindful seated meditation and also mindful yoga. And at the end of the study, of course, they asked the participants to do a self-assessment. And those self-assessments indicated that they were more focused, they had a better memory, they were more productive, more self-aware. But in addition to the self-assessments, they did functional fMRIs. And what they found was that during those 8 weeks, the structure, the architecture of the brain actually changed. In just 8 weeks, 30 minutes a day of some type of mindfulness practice, the hippocampus, the gray matter around the hippocampus actually increased in volume. And the hippocampus is the center of learning, memory, and self-awareness. In addition to that, they found that the gray matter around the amygdala actually shrunk in size. The amygdala, the gray matter, decreased in volume. And if you've come to some of our past webinars, you know the amygdala is responsible for that fight or flight mechanism, right? It's fear, it's stress, it's anxiety. And the individuals in the mindfulness group, it actually decreased in volume. And to correlate with that, the people in the mindfulness project indicated they were less stressed, they were less anxious. And that's amazing because their environment didn't change at all. The only things that changed were they incorporated mindfulness practices and it decreased the gray matter around the amygdala. So pretty amazing study that was done. So mindfulness can help us recognize and regulate our emotions. And you know that emotion regulation is a big process. It's of a lot of concern. Whenever I talk to clients, one area of executive function that a lot of children and adults are struggling with is emotion regulation. So mindfulness helps you recognize and regulate your emotions because you have to think about all of the cognitive processes that are required for emotion regulation. You have to be able to truly be in the present moment, right? You have to focus on the entire situation. You have to process that information. You have to control your impulsive nature just to just to respond with that first emotion. And you also have to have good memory because you have to be able to draw on prior experiences in order to properly evaluate the appropriate response in that situation. And many studies have indicated that mindfulness leads to improved working memory. And remember, working memory is our ability to take in information, hold that information on our mental sticky note in order to complete a task. So it's a little bit different than short-term memory, in that short-term memory is the ability to remember dates, names, facts. So if you and I met at a conference and I said, hello, my name is Gwen, and you said, Gwen, that's short-term memory. So short-term memory, you took in information, you held it for about 15 to 30 seconds, and then you gave that same information back to me. Working memory is where you have to hold that information in order to manipulate it and complete a task. So classic example for us as adults is you walk into a room, and once you get into that room, you have no idea why you're there, right? That is a lapse in working memory. So they found that the control of working memory was much better with people who practiced mindfulness. And remember, working memory is housed in the hippocampus, right? The hippocampus is the control center for working memory. And we saw in that Harvard study where the gray matter around the hippocampus actually increased in volume. Mindfulness can improve decision-making by increasing our self-awareness. And when we are better at understanding our own thought processes, we are better at making decisions. So by reducing stress through mindfulness, you can improve your executive function in order to perform better in academic, professional, and personal settings. So it does seem that these are interrelated, right? Mindfulness and executive function are very much interrelated. So if we can improve our ability to remain in the present moment, be more mindful, then we can improve our executive function. But if we improve our executive function, we will be better able to be more present, to be more mindful. And the opposite is true too. If we are struggling to be in the present moment, we're struggling with mindfulness, then executive function is going to be negatively affected. In the same that if we have weak executive function, it's harder for us to be mindful. So what can we do in order to improve executive function and also mindfulness? I'm going to talk about a few different ways we can do that through daily mindfulness practices that we can incorporate in our day-to-day, but I'm also going to show you the power of neurotechnology and how with our play attention body wave system, we can actually enhance your mindfulness practice by showing you how to be in the present moment. Karen asks, please define executive function. So Karen, that's an excellent question. And I'm sorry if I was not thorough enough on that. So you can think of executive function as the CEO of your brain. It's what allows you to control your attention, your behaviors, your emotions. It allows you to plan, prioritize, organize, avoid procrastination, and remain on task. And so no one is born with strong executive function. However, we all have the ability to develop strong executive function. And that development starts right after birth and continues through our mid to late 20s. Unfortunately, for a lot of our students, we expect them to have strong executive function by the time they hit middle school. So right around the age of 12, we expect everyone to have strong executive function, to be able to plan and prioritize, be more organized, be more independent. And that doesn't always naturally occur. There are a lot of factors that can inhibit that development, one of which is ADHD. Another is anxiety, trauma, stress. All of those factors can inhibit that development. And so that's why executive function for individuals with ADHD are often weak. But we're seeing it across the board now because COVID and the fact that many of our students had to work online and be isolated and do schooling online, many of our students, that development of executive function was delayed. So I hope, Karen, that that further explains executive function. And we're going to continue talking about it throughout all of this. And if you need more information, just let me know, because I certainly have plenty of information that I could share with you on that topic. So we're going to talk about how we can improve both mindfulness and executive function. So as I mentioned earlier, many of us think of mindfulness as the ability to do that mindful body scan or mindful meditation. And I've talked to so many of our clients, especially our adult clients, and they'll say to me, I've tried mindfulness and it just doesn't work for me. I was working with one of my adult clients and she said, I tried 10 minutes of mindfulness and it just doesn't work, because at the end of that mindfulness session, it was 10 minutes. All I did was write my entire grocery list. So I had my grocery list done at the end of the 10 minutes, but I didn't practice mindfulness. And that's because she had weak executive function. So it was very difficult for her to self-regulate and self-monitor, because that is part of executive function. And a hallmark of mindfulness is that ability to recognize when distracting thoughts come to mind and just simply let them go. So you'll hear a lot of times, let those thoughts come in, but just let them go. And that's sometimes more easily said than done, right? Especially if we have a hard time self-regulating and self-monitoring, because when that distracting thought came in, she clung to it and she went with it, and she was never able to redirect herself. So that's going to be part that I talk about with neurotechnology, how we can start developing that self-regulation. So let's start with some simpler techniques in the day-to-day that will help you practice being in the present moment. And I do hope that some of these exercises I share with you are exercises that are easily accessible to you. So there are some guidelines for your mindfulness activities. One is no devices. So as we discussed earlier, many of you said part of our mindful listening prep was to turn devices off, mute your phone, put your computer aside, turn off all your apps, hydrate before the activity, wear comfortable clothing, use a timer if appropriate, because sometimes you need to know that there's an end. So maybe use a timer. Make certain your environment is safe, no judgment, and quiet. So if you're doing a mindfulness activity with your friends or family members, just make certain that you hold the reflection part, the verbal reflection part of your mindfulness practice, hold it until the end. Bonita says, I often feel anxious when I try mindfulness. And, Bonita, that's probably because you're overthinking it, right? You're thinking you're going to do it wrong. You're already self-criticizing. And so try to use some of these techniques I talk about today, very simple actions that you can take to stay in the present moment. Because remember, you're supposed to be non-judgmental. So try to let those things go, and also try to limit the time. So if 1 minute is all you feel you can do, start with 1 minute. And if it's certain exercises that are causing that anxiety, like you're trying too hard to do a mindful body scan, leave that one aside and build in some of these easier daily routines that you can do and build yourself up to those harder techniques. So mindfulness activities are designed to help you stay in the present moment, pay attention to your body and your mind, and understand your feelings. So here are 3 mindfulness activities in addition to the mindful listening. I definitely want you to do that. But these activities are ones that I selected because I feel that they are accessible to everyone, both children and adults. The first is a mindful walk in the grass. Now, the number one thing you need to remember when you're doing a mindful walk in the grass is that means you are just focusing on the walk, that you are not listening to a podcast while you're walking. You're not making a phone call while you're walking. You are just focused on each step and each breath. So here are some tips for mindful walking. You're walking slowly, no rushing. There's no rush. It's all about the journey, not the destination, right? Each step is deliberate, silent, slow. You want to notice the sensation as each part of your foot hits the ground. And notice the different sounds your foot makes as it moves across the ground. And you want to try to stay relaxed and calm. Now, if you can do this exercise out in the grass, that can be an added benefit because we know that when you're out in the grass and you're walking in the grass, even if you can go barefoot in the grass, that's what's called grounding or earthing. So that can have some nice health benefits as well. And so this can be a simple act that you do. And you may want to ask your child or your partner to join this with you. And remember, reflect at the end. Talk about what you noticed, but keep the reflection, the verbal reflection, for the end of your mindful walk. Yes, Bonita. Bonita wants to know about a mindful body scan. And actually, I think I have an example I can send to everyone after this webinar, and I'd be happy to do that for you. But it's basically when you are either seated or you can be laying down and you're just thinking about each single body part as you move from the top of your head all the way down to your feet, or you can work from your feet all the way up to your head. So you might think about your toes, and you can even curl your toes and then release them and just think about your toes. And then you gradually move up to the balls of your feet, your heels, and you just gradually scan all the way up your body. But I know I do have an example of how to go through that process. So I'll include it in the follow-up, Anita, okay? All right. Mindfully blowing bubbles. Now, I like this one because we know that breathing calms our nervous system and helps us become more mindful. There was even someone here today that mentioned getting prepared for that mindful listening. I can't remember who said it, but she said, take a deep breath to help with that transition. So mindfully blowing bubbles can actually allow you to focus on the breath and teach a younger individual how to focus on the breath because you have an activity to do along with it. So when you breathe in, you're focused on the breath as it enters your lungs. And as you breathe out, not only do you feel that breath as it leaves your body, but you're able to watch that bubble as it expands. And now you're going to be fully present and be the bubble, right? So you're watching as the bubble expands. You're watching as the light hits the bubble differently and how it changes the colors on that bubble. And you're watching as it drifts away. And as those distracting thoughts come in, just place them on those bubbles and let them drift away. So be the bubble. That mindful bubble blowing can be a really fun activity for you as an adult or maybe as a family. Mindful cloud watching is another one that's easy for all of us to do. And we just released a mindful cloud watching video for our mindful media player that I'm going to talk to you about. And so that's a video version of it, but it's nice if you can go outside. And if you can't go outside, if you're in an apartment, you can at least look outside your window in a comfortable area. But if you can be outside and lay down and look up at the clouds, and as you're just laying there, just pay attention to the clouds as they move by. So you're watching those clouds as they drift by. You're looking to see how the wind changes the formation of the cloud. Do any of the clouds look like faces or animals? And so you're just being present. Now, remember, as Bonita said, sometimes it causes some anxiety when she's trying to do these exercises. So limiting the time, your expectation of time, can be a good way to release that anxiety. If you know you're only going to do this for 5 minutes, set your timer for 5 minutes, and you have that start and end point. And then when you get to the end of that mindful cloud watching, you can discuss, if you were doing it with someone else, you can discuss with that individual what they observed during that activity. And then as you move throughout your day, remember mindful cloud watching. Just as you cannot hold on to a cloud, you should not hold on to any negative thoughts that occur during the day. So when those negative thoughts come in, you can visualize just placing those thoughts on the clouds and let them drift away. So those are my top 3 for you. And I hope that you can actually use some of those mindfulness techniques and incorporate them into your daily life. And once you get started on these little activities, you can start incorporating mindfulness into other activities that you do. And remember, it's all about calming the mind and being truly present, not multitasking. So that's what you should really focus on when you start doing something and you want it to be a mindful activity, no multitasking. Now, I mentioned to you that I was going to share some neurotechnology with you that can also enhance your practice because, like we were saying, mindfulness practices can be difficult. And, it can be that you haven't developed self-regulation. So it's hard for you to self-regulate and bring yourself back to the present moment. So within Play Attention, we have our body wave technology. And I know that many of you here today are current clients. So you utilize our body wave technology for the executive function training. But we have released many mindfulness applications that I want to share with you because we know that, again, mindfulness and executive function are interrelated. So if we can improve our mindfulness, we improve executive function. And while we're going through our Play Attention training, we're improving executive function and we can improve our ability to stay in the present moment. So for those of you who are not familiar with the body wave technology, on the back, there are 3 sensors. So those sensors simply rest on your arm. And those sensors monitor your brain activity that tells us how attentive you are. And that, or in this case, how mindful you are, how present you are. And then that information is given over to the computer where you're allowed to control different exercises by mind alone. And in these particular exercises, we're working on mindfulness. So we have 3 mindfulness exercises. Da Vinci's Candle is our newest release that I'm going to share a little snippet with you. And then we also have Lotus and our mindful media player. So if we just look at Da Vinci's Candle, because remember earlier how we discussed my client who said, I tried mindfulness, but all I did was write my grocery list. At the end of 10 minutes, I had my grocery list. And that's because she never recognized and self-regulated. So what Da Vinci's Candle allows you to do is you're in Da Vinci's laboratory and you'll see the candle Actually, I'm going to share a video with you first. Let me share this video with you. It's only about 30 seconds long. So, because I want you to see the feedback and then we're going to discuss the significance of it. So, just one moment, and I'm going to hopefully share this quick video for you.
Play Attention's mindfulness activity takes you to the serenity of Leonardo da Vinci's lab, where you'll practice mindfulness using your body wave armband. You'll see the hourglass begin your session. The candle responds to your mindful state, staying fully bright when you are most mindful. The flame will shrink if you lose your mindful state. Calmly regulate your breathing to maintain a mindful state.
Okay, so I hope that actually shared with you, and you were able to see that video where, remember, you're utilizing the body wave armband and we're monitoring your ability to stay in the present moment. If you are in the present moment, you're able to make the candle nice and bright. If you start thinking about when's my next meeting, what do I have to do after work, when do I have to pick up the kids, that is going to decrease. All right. So you were able to, when you were in the present moment, that candle got bright. And then when you started those distracting thoughts, then the candle actually diminished and you weren't as bright. So we are helping you enhance your mindfulness practice by giving you a visual representation of what it means to be in the present moment. And when you can see your mindfulness in real time, that will help you develop that skill of mindfulness and develop better control. So that's Da Vinci's candle. It's a great application. And if you are a current client here today and you want to incorporate that, just let me know and we'll reach out to you about that Da Vinci's candle. Lotus is another mindfulness application that we have. And on this one, you'll see a lotus flower in the middle of the screen. Once you have your mind in the present moment, then the petal will start opening. If you, again, start thinking about all those other things you have to do, what's for dinner, when do I have to pick up the kids, when's my next meeting, that petal will start to close because you're no longer in the present moment and you have to bring yourself back in order to continue. And immediate feedback regarding your mindful state is so powerful because we all learn through immediate feedback. That's how we learn. But sometimes when we're doing a mindfulness exercise and don't have that accommodation that kind of gives us that nudge back, we may go down that rabbit hole. So this is how neurotechnology can really positively reinforce that ability to stay in the present moment so that you can develop that skill. We also have a mindful media player, and the mindful media player is a really exciting application where you can bring in either video or audio files into our player, and you will actually activate the video or the audio file by being in the present moment. So we have a media player library that you can download breathing exercises. You can download positive affirmations, daily gratitude exercises, positive puzzles of positivity, we call them. There are all types of exercises that are in video form, and you import them into your mindful media player. And remember, you have your you have your body wave system on. And as long as you are in the present moment, you'll be able to go through all of the positive affirmations. If your mind starts to drift, then the video is going to stop. It's going to wait for you to bring yourself back to the present moment, and then it will continue. So it's a fantastic exercise. And the media player library is really nice. And you get 3 new videos every single month. So again, any of our clients that are here today, if you want more information on that, just let me know. Bonnie says, can this band be donned with having only one arm? Absolutely. That is not an issue at all. No problem. Now, in addition, because remember, we were talking about how in order to improve mindfulness, we can also improve executive function and vice versa. And if we have weak executive function, then it may be difficult for us to get into that mindfulness state. So when you are considering play attention can actually customize a neurocognitive training plan that will pinpoint the different cognitive skills that right now may be weak for you, but are required for strong executive function. And if you look at the screen right now, and you can see all of the different cognitive exercises we can address within your program: attention stamina, task completion, working memory, auditory processing, social skills, all of these cognitive areas that, again, lay the foundation for strong executive function. And what's important for you to remember is that all of these exercises, no matter what you're working on, whether it's task completion or social skills or working memory, all of them are brain enabled, meaning you have to be paying attention in order to activate the activity. If you're not paying attention, then the activity will stop or the character will go in the wrong direction, and you have to bring yourself back in order to continue. And the reason we do this is because when we talk about developing mindfulness or strengthening executive function, we're talking about sparking brain change. And we know in order to spark brain change, you have to be actively engaged. So that's why the very first catalyst that is necessary for brain change is attention. So we make certain that while you're working on all of these cognitive exercises, you are actively engaged. Okay. If you want more information on play attention, we do one-on-one consultations to discuss the program with you. And we also have a webinar upcoming that's going to be specifically about play attention. It's educational foundation. So play attention is another example. I want you to do those daily practices and incorporate mindfulness into your day-to-day routines. But play attention can also enhance that mindfulness practice, teach you how to stay in the present moment while improving all of those skills you need in order to strengthen executive function. Okay. So to summarize, mindfulness is a simple yet powerful tool that can have a positive impact on your academic, professional, and personal life. Because remember, you're actually developing that ability to consciously control your actions, your thoughts, and your behaviors. You can incorporate mindfulness into everyday activities, like we talked about. Mindful listening is one that you were hopefully practicing just now, and you're going to incorporate on a day-to-day basis. Mindfulness can improve executive function, and play attention can enhance your mindfulness practice and improve executive function. So let's talk about some next steps. I showed that one slide that had all of the cognitive skills that can be addressed within your play attention program. And those are all of those foundational skills that are required for strong executive function: focus, task completion, impulse control, processing speed. But if you're uncertain about the cognitive skills that may be weak for you or your child or your clients, we have a couple of assessments available. One is called Focus, which is a norm reference test of attentional control. It's computer-based. It takes about 20 minutes. And at the end of the 20 minutes, we receive a full report that tells us how you performed compared to the performance of your peers. We also have the Brief available, and that's a behavior rating intake of executive function. And that's more of a subjective assessment where it's an online survey where you do a self-assessment, or you may be assessing your child. And it gives us a really good snapshot of your executive function on a day-to-day basis. So those two assessments are available. And if you opt to do those assessments, we do need about a 40-minute block of time afterwards to review the results with you, because our goal is to not only talk about the areas that we want to improve, the areas of concern, but to also make a plan of action. What can we do to actually improve those areas and strengthen executive function? If you're interested in an assessment or more information about that, just type in assessment. The assessments are $50 a piece, but with your webinar special, you'll receive buy one and get the second one at half price. If you do want more information on the assessment process, go ahead and type in assessments and we can reach out to you and provide you with more information about the assessments. If you just want to do a one-on-one consultation and maybe you want to talk about our mindfulness applications, or perhaps you want to talk about your specific needs and how we can customize a neurocognitive training plan for you, type in consultation and we'll send you our consultation calendar so that you can schedule a time with one of our advisors. And again, the consultation is included with the assessment. So the assessment and then the consultation. But if you feel you don't need an assessment, you just want to have that conversation, type in consultation and we'll talk to you about your specific needs and how we can develop a training program for you. Or if you would just like to attend the next webinar, which is Play Attention 101, and you want more information specifically on Play Attention's educational foundation, the Tufts University School of Medicine research that's been done, the fact that we've been a leader in neurocognitive training for the last 30 years, Play Attention 101 webinar in a couple of weeks will review all of that information and the whole process and the program and how we customize each individual's plan and how you'll be assigned a personal executive function coach to help you through that plan. If you want to attend that webinar, just type in webinar and we'll get you registered. And if you are a current or non-current client and you just simply want more information on our mindfulness apps, type in mindfulness and we'll get that information out to you. I really do appreciate your time today. I hope that this webinar gave you some time to reflect on mindfulness and the importance of mindfulness and how you can start a simpler way of accessing some mindfulness activities into your day-to-day life. And remember, not only are you going to incorporate that into your life, but when you start modeling it, then you're modeling that behavior, especially that mindful listening, for your partner or your colleagues or your children, and it can really improve your overall life as a whole. So I really do appreciate your time today. I hope that you are walking away with some things that you can do on a daily basis that will lower stress and improve executive function. And I look forward to seeing you at a consultation or our next webinar. Take care, everyone.